day, how can cats and dogs live together in harmony? So I'm excited to hear what they have to say. If you haven't met Mike Opperman before, Mike is the director of dairy content at Farm Journal, and Leah Mindemann is a national account manager who works with a few different magazines at Farm Journal and beyond. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to them to let them introduce themselves to you guys. Just a couple of quick housekeeping details. A reminder that this is being recorded, so we'll have this available to share if you have friends or colleagues who weren't able to attend today, or if you want to listen to it again later. Also, there is at the bottom of your screen, there's a chat bubble, and if you click on that off to the right, you'll see a group chat section, and that's for you guys to ask questions. So feel free to jot down questions as you go. Leah will talk more about why you should do that in a little bit, but feel free to do that as we go, and we'll bring those up to them at the end. If there's something super urgent, feel free to try to speak in the middle of it, but we normally try to encourage them to get through their part, and then we open it up for questions at the end. So with that, if you have any technical issues, feel free to put it over in the chat as well, but I don't know if I can help you. I'll do my best. I'm not a guru, and you might be able to. But with that, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate you guys being a part of these chats as a way for us to bring LPC members together throughout the year to talk about issues in our jobs. Take it from there, guys. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. It's a pleasure for us to be here today. I'll just give a brief introduction of myself. Mike Opperman, as Jen said. I've been with Farm Journal for about 2.5 years now, managing the dairy editorial content for Dairy Herd Management and Milk Magazine. Prior to that, I spent about almost 15 years at Charleston Norway Marketing Communications Agency, doing PR and marketing strategy and communication strategy for a variety of clients across agriculture. And prior to that, did a bunch of different things. I started out my career in communications with another magazine, and also managed my own dairy for a while. So I've been in communications and agriculture for a long time.
Yeah, so I'm Leah Mindemann. As you guys said, I'm on the sales side of the business. I've been in media sales for about 12 years. I actually had the pleasure of working with Mike when he was in the PR role at Charleston Norway before that, and now we get to work together at Farm Journal. We both live right here in southeastern Wisconsin, so it's nice that we could do this together today. And my husband and I farm. I'm a 5th generation farm kid from Minnesota, went to school at UW-Madison, and then Andy and I got married, and now we farm with my in-laws here in Sullivan, Wisconsin, raise Angus cows and corn, soybeans, and kids. So pleasure to be here, and thanks Jen and Angie for asking us to do this.
So as Jen said, our topic is around how salespeople and editorial folks can work together. And just to kind of go through what our agenda is going to be, we're going to talk through what that challenge looks like, how we've been able to resolve some of those issues and challenges, and then some real life examples for you to kind of think about and work through. So certainly we don't want this to happen. From an editorial standpoint, we wanted to be able to deliver content and material that is unbiased, that is genuine. We certainly don't want to have sales articles and self-serving corporate fluff and whatnot that are as part of our publications, and our publications are online resources as well. So the challenge is, from an advertising standpoint, an advertiser obviously wants it all. They want brand awareness, they want to be differentiated, they want some elements of their communications that can perhaps not directly affect sales, but could lead to a sale in the future. So it's all about gathering market share and sales and so forth. As a media salesperson, you want that advertiser to buy media, obviously. Sorry to be Captain Obvious for a minute, but you want to make that advertiser happy, so you want them to be able to buy media, because that generates revenue, generates profits for the company, and so forth. And then from an editorial standpoint, I want to be able to protect the integrity of the magazine and the brand, because that's all about who we are, is making sure that we are relevant and unbiased to our audience. So it's kind of a three-legged stool of trying to keep everyone happy, and while also preserving the integrity of the brand as it goes forward.
So ultimately, it's to all of our best interests that, one, we work together great, but also that we have a good collaborative effort with our clients and our readers. And so that's kind of what Mike and I are focusing in on today, and really ultimately is something that we do on a daily basis. So number one, we're both in it for the same brand. And that's to my benefit as well. That first cartoon that we put up, the read all about it, that's not good for me either. It's beneficial for me to be able to bring a product that I can tell all of my clients that our readers are eager to receive in their mailbox and open up or get in their inbox on a daily basis. And so while I am certainly interested in selling more media, I'm also really interested in having a sound product to sell. And so we want to make sure that, one, we're on the same team, and also that I recognize the challenges that Mike's dealing with, and he recognizes the value that I'm bringing to the table as well. So how can we do that? The number one thing that I think is of benefit is keeping up to speed with what's going on in the industry. Mike can't be all places at all times, and certainly my clients maybe are in different places than where he is at. So after I have a call or a meeting with someone, I often am pinging a note to Jennifer or Mike or Greg or whomever I'm working with, and saying, hey, did you know? Are you aware? Are you going to be at? Have you heard about? And so one, sometimes I get the other side of the story back from them. And another angle to that is they say, oh yeah, so-and-so is going to be there, or I'm going to be at that event. Great. That'll be a good time for me to meet up and follow up on this. It's also an opportunity for me to say, hey, this client is doing this. Have you heard about this? Or they're working with this university on this kind of a program, a research trial, what have you. And so it's kind of a nice way for them to be aware of things that might be happening on the front end of stuff. So they've at least got it on their radar as things play out. It's also my job, I think, to be a buffer between what our editors are covering and the agendas that they have for our editorial calendar or content for each month, and what our clients' agendas are. One, it helps keep me in the loop, but two, it gives them a little bit of breathing room as editors to get their jobs done as well. Next on the list, I've got the read our own publications. It's surprising to me, unfortunately, from time to time, if I bring up to folks like, oh, hey, did you see in our last issue, or did you read this issue maybe in a competitor's pub? And they say, oh, no, I don't really read it. You should be reading it. It's good to be entrenched and also know not only what your clients are doing, but what their competitors are doing. And that way it brings more value to my clients when they meet with me as well, if I've got an invested interest in what they're trying to get done. And last on my list here is when we're at trade shows or even in office meetings and we bring an editor in, I try to really use that time while they're conversing and talking about those projects to learn. One, what are the big rocks that are pushing down their pipeline? Two, what are the pulse of what my editors are glomming onto and really find interest in? And three, it's just a great time for me to get broader industry education. And I'm a beef kid, but even in those beef meetings, I'll learn about that. Certainly in dairy and the swine meetings and the vet meetings that I go into. So I'd encourage any of the folks that are on the sales side, try to put your agenda of what you're trying to get sold aside and really just take that opportunity to learn about what's happening for them.
So just 2 points that I would make on this slide. First, on the on the first two bullet points, the interaction that I have with Leah and other members of our team, she never tries to push things on me from, we have to write about this advertiser or this client in the magazine, or these guys are doing something great, so we need to write about this. It's very much an FYI type of an approach of, hey, you should be aware of this, or hey, did you know type of an approach, rather than you need to.
Well, he's a lot bigger than me, so that doesn't go anywhere.
And I think that's in any relationship between a media person and an editor, that needs to happen. And then to the last point about editorial meetings. So in my previous role, I set up a lot of meetings between editors and salespeople or communications people from companies. And the worst meetings that I had were when salespeople would climb in and take over the meeting and try to sell something, and that would grate me to no end. So it's really important that you respect the time that the editor and the communications or marketing person from the company have together, so that they can help to share ideas, to talk about topics or content that the editor is interested in, and not overtake it and create a sales opportunity out of it. Those should be set aside for some other time. Set up your own meeting or go out for dinner or drinks, whatever. Don't do it during my time. Can you tell that really is passionate?
Well, and I would actually say you should use it in your mind. You can be thinking about some of that stuff, but don't let that become the theme of the meeting. It's the follow-up.
So I'll get off my soapbox and we'll go to the next slide. So how can editorial work with sales? First of all, and a lot of times I'll get a direct contact from either an agency person or one of our clients, potential clients, trying to pitch me a story or talk about a product introduction or something like that. I would say almost every time that happens, I will send a note to Leah or another member of our sales team and say, hey, so-and-so just contacted me. I just wanted to keep you in the loop. Because I would hate for Leah to be in a meeting with that client and have them say, hey, I reached out to Mike about this, and Leah be, oh, really? I didn't know that. So,
yeah, it just goes back to the respect of the roles. I think we have a good relationship that way. And it's nice from a sales side, if it's a client that maybe we haven't been calling on, God forbid, right? But there's something happening and new, and they've reached out because they have a story to tell. We should also be working with them.
Right. I always, every month or before every issue, I put together a list of stories that are going to go into either dairy herd management or milk, and I distribute that to the sales team. As a way of keeping them in the loop of what content is coming down the pipe, so that they can turn around and let some of our clients know, hey, we have an article on this coming up you might be interested in, and try to help pull that sales through. Again, it's me generating the topics and the content, or I should say my team generating the topics, the content, and then sharing that with sales, and not, but yet I don't involve you in the creation part of that.
Right. So
church and state is still separate. The third point really goes without saying, but I think it's so critical, is I need to be able to, and our team needs to be able to create good content. Because if we don't do that, then she doesn't have anything to sell.
And our readers have no interest in opening the pub. So, which at the end of the day is obviously what we're both driving toward.
Right. I try to do my best to stay abreast of what our clients are doing from a industry standpoint. Because there are a lot of novel things that are going on in the industry. Back in the day when I first started in this industry, all of the news came out of universities and extension, and they were the hallmark of all of the news that was generated in agriculture, and we all know what's happened to that industry. So it's important for us to stay in touch with what our clients are doing, so that we can be able to develop content and areas around those topics. At the same time, I'm also keenly aware and can stay up to speed on university research. So because that still is, a very important part of content development. So it's important that we stay in touch with that. And then the final point I'll touch on is we need to be able to be available to our sales team when asked to help sell. I think there are some editors in the industry, I should say, who don't ever want to be a part of what I call dog and pony roadshows or anything like that. And certainly it's not a large part of what I do, but I realize what Leah's role is and what other people's roles is on our sales team. And I know what my part is, so I need to be able to get to engage and be part of those selling opportunities when I'm asked to, and not say, no, that's for you guys to do. I need to understand, I understand my role as a content lead and a brand lead, that I need to be able to help them sell whenever the opportunity arises. Because, not to be Captain Obvious again, but advertising sales kind of help our company. So,
they do.
Right.
They do. And I reiterate that point to him.
So just a few case studies I wanted to walk through to kind of help demonstrate how we've been able to work together on different areas. So, and you'll see some company names here. Really, we could insert a variety of different company names because we've done these activities, I would say, across a variety of different clients. But
sure.
One that came to mind initially was a project that we worked on about a year ago. I was working on an article on genomics in the dairy industry, and I wanted to identify a producer who was using genomic technology. So I reached out to Leah and I said, hey, can you put me in touch with somebody at Neogen who, because I knew that they were using some different technology that I wanted to talk about. And she put me in touch with somebody at Neogen. And that's really, after that, that's really what I needed. Yep. I just needed a foot in the door at the company so I could talk to them and identify some of their customers that I might be able to interview. So the source at Neogen gave me a few customer leads. I ended up interviewing a dairy producer in Indiana. Turned out to be great. The article was great. It led to some other things that I wasn't even aware of when I pulled on to the dairy. So it's really a great way for all of us to work together. And Neogen was very happy about something.
Yeah. Keep going.
So Neogen was very happy to have that resource and be able to provide that resource to me, and the article turned out great. I should make fully aware that in the article in no way said that Neogen's products were the best in the world, and I didn't go into feature benefits and things like that of any products. This was solely a customer that was using the product, and we talked about how they use genomics, and it was more around the topic and the content rather than the actual product.
And it ended up being a great win for Neogen. I was able to get them some extra copies. The sales rep who worked with that farm got some recognition for the day-to-day work that he's doing. Not a guy that I'd ever worked with or had great story for Neogen about one of their key customers, but without really naming Neogen in the story.
Right. The second piece started at the conversation at World Dairy Expo a year ago, last October. And I sat down, it was a typical trade show. Leah did a very nice job of not selling stuff in the editor meeting. But the contact at Alltech said, hey, we'd like to bring you down to headquarters and show you around, get you to meet some of the research folks and see some of the research that we're doing. Oh, and by the way, we'll pay for you to come. And the reason why I say that is because, again, I've been in this business a long time, and there are some editors and some media folks you feel like if a company pays for the editor to go to a meeting or a product unveiling or something like that, that editor has then somehow compromised their integrity and their bias. There are some ground rules that need to be laid before you're willing to accept any of those offers. And travel budgets where they are, there are more and more folks in my business that are in my position that are accepting of some of those offers. But some of the ground rules need to be laid that, like I make fully aware that it's not going to compromise my position on anything that you're going to show or tell me. That I'm still going to provide an unbiased viewpoint on the topic, and if they're not comfortable with that, I certainly don't need to go. But as long as you have those ground rules laid ahead of time, then that leads to a more successful activity. So I went down there, viewed their facilities. It was a great trip. Got to meet some really innovative researchers, and resulted in an article that featured one of the sources that I met with. So I didn't promote an Alltech product. I didn't say that Alltech was the greatest company in the world, but I did highlight some of the really innovative research that they were doing, and resulted in a win-win for everyone. And again, Leah was very much a part of all of that organization. Final two in this top one is really again one of those that could be any company listed as a subject, because we do this. I would say this, of all of the work that we do together from a content standpoint, this activity is probably the most that we do.
Common, yeah.
I work with a technical salesperson or a technical person to identify a source. A lot of times if I don't have the contact at the company, I'll get that from somebody on the sales team. They identify producers to interview. We've done this a couple of different times with Mycogen.
Right.
I've done it with a score of other different companies, Zoetis, and a long list of companies. But again, the most important part is the third bullet, is that Leah, or the salesperson who calls on that company, is always in the loop on everything that we do.
And in this case, and not shockingly, where it's a client that we've both worked with for a long time, I'm not even on the front end anymore. Mike can reach out. He knows the folks who are on their team. He knows the guys in the field that actually work for Mycogen. Mm-hmm. But it's nice that he'll throw me on a CC and be like, hey, this is happening. And so that's important. That's good. It's good for me because then I can bring it up to folks who maybe aren't aware of it, and the relationship that he's got with some of their field experts. But also it's a nice boost, I think, for the PR team to be able to show their client that some of those things are happening. And quite frankly, I think it speaks to a company mention in one of Mike's articles or anywhere else within our publications, that if you get mentioned, it's because you're putting out good stuff that is in the wheelhouse of what our editors are looking to write about.
And I think we can do that without compromising our integrity or showing any bias towards any company. And one of the things that we do, or try to do our best at, is if we're writing an article on a specific topic and there are 3 different companies who sell products or services under that same umbrella, we try to include as many of those company sources as we can in the article, not to make sure that everybody's happy, although right. That's a kind of an underlying benefit, but more to show that we don't have bias towards one company or another. So we try to do that as often as possible when we're putting together content.
Well, and we assume that our readers are looking to it. If they're interested in the topic, they're exploring their options as well. Mm-hmm.
And then the final case study that we'll talk about is something that we've started to do. We developed a comparison table of mastitis products in the last issue of Dairy Herd Management. And it caused a little bit of heartburn amongst our editorial team because there's a lot of companies that play in this space. There's a lot of products that are in this space. And long story short, there's a lot of opportunity to screw it up. And if it gets screwed up, it's a big deal for us, for sales and so forth. So there's a lot of walking on eggshells as we put this together, but we move forward. And I think the key to success in something like this, again, is to keep the sales team engaged, because I work directly with the sales team to identify the right contacts at each of those companies, so that when I got the table put together, I could share it directly with those client contacts, and so that they could give their sign off and approval of, and that's not necessarily approval is the wrong word, but verify that the information is correct. So we did that, worked directly with clients and in some cases agencies to verify the data. Ran the table in last issue, as I said, and as far as I know, I still have a job. So everything turned out fine. I think the point is that those things can work, but they can only work if you work closely with the sales team to be able to identify the right resources, because it could go wrong very easily if I were to do that myself. I might get the wrong contact. God forbid, I might have the wrong information, and then suddenly it all gets done, and then Leah gets a call saying, "Hey, what the hell happened?" and she doesn't in the loop. So that could all really fall apart quickly. So it's really important to have the sales team engaged.
Avoiding surprises.
Correct.
Yes. So there are so many things to be considered, and that everybody has their own agenda of what they're trying to get on top of, but none of us have a crystal ball, as being illustrated here in this cartoon. And so I guess I would just say that having this kind of open lines of communication internally and externally helps to make it seem sometimes when the stars align that you did have one. And ultimately, that's what we're all after. But you definitely know when you have crossed the line, because, hang on,
Wait for it.
wait for it. Oh, come on. One of my favorite videos.
That's what happens when things go wrong.
Right. So we'd like to open it up to questions, and just because we're biased, we're willing to ship you a fancy schmancy Farm Journal mug if you ask one.
You can either put a question in the Zoom chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question live too, whichever you prefer to do.
Do I count?
Of course you count, Jen.
No, I don't count. I'll leave the mugs up for grabs yet. But one of my questions might be, for me, like coming in and being new in my role, this was my first time being on the editor side of things. And so do you have any tips for, I guess, how you start building those relationships in the beginning? Like when you guys started working together, what were some tangible ways that how did you connect, and how did you start down the path on that relationship for new editors or people that are, I know we sometimes have students who watch this who might be moving into an editor type role. What are ways that they can build those relationships between editors and sales teams?
Well, I'll start, and then Leah can jump in. Trade shows are a great way to do that, just both from a standpoint of walking around with the salesperson and meeting some of their clients, because they're all kind of in one area, and you can do that. And for me, that's really the best way to get to know folks that are in a communications or marketing role at clients that Leah or anyone our sales team works with, is to be able to sit down with them face to face and build those relationships. And then I would say for anybody that's getting into the editorial role is don't be afraid to say what you don't know. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Because I've been as I said, been in the business a long time, and I will still ask Leah or Annie or anybody on our team, hey, who's a person at such and such company that I can talk to about XYZ content. But I think what's also critically important, we've said it a number of times in this presentation, is I have to have that open relationship with the sales team so that I can ask those questions.
And I would say, even if you're new on the sales side, equally as important, it's the time in the industry related events. So trade shows are one of the hardest times to actually get on an editor's calendar, even for me as a salesperson. But if I can spend an evening at an industry banquet with them, if I can walk the trade show floor in that half-hour time slot when they've got it available, one, it's a great time for me to say, oh, hey, come with me. I just want to introduce you to a new communications manager that I'm working with. Or as people are walking by, it's like, I mean, it's crazy to me how people who read the publications will stop and be like, oh, hey, I just want to tell you about it, that article I really love. So that's nice. You get good positive feedback to share with your clients, but also it's a time for Mike to introduce me to somebody from, industry organizations who are like, hey, do you know Dr. So-and-so? No, I don't. Well, he's the guy who I'm working with on this, and so it's just, again, and hard sometimes, but time.
Okay, we've got a flood of questions. So I guess we'll start off with one from Jen Norrie. Do you find press releases worthwhile for editorial content and or sales opportunities?
Yes. Yes, press releases are really important for us, just to help us to stay abreast of everything that's going on in the industry. Oftentimes, we will use the press release as a foundation for creating an article on the topic. So we generally don't just cut and paste a press release.
We don't.
Or I guess we don't, online or in the magazine. But we'll use parts of it to build a larger story or put our own perspective on a specific topic area. So yes, press releases are very important for us.
Okay, next one. Can Mike offer suggestions on what is fair or ethical as far as expenses for a company to cover for an editor to come to a company for a tour or media event?
Sure. As I said, travel budgets being what they may, not across the industry, we're always looking for opportunities where we can get out into the field and meet with folks or reach out to producers or whatnot. I think it's fair for a company to either purchase or offer a credit towards an airline ticket or a hotel room. I think that's fair. It gets a little bit out of line when they are, offering any other kind of incentive or tchotchke or whatever that might influence, one way or another. Because, marketing budgets aren't exactly as big as they used to be as well. So, and I think it comes down to whatever the editor is comfortable with. You have to have your ethical barometer in place at all times. So if you get in a situation where you feel like, this is going a little bit too far, don't be afraid to say, I'm not comfortable with that. Because you don't want to set expectations so high that you're put in a compromised position. And I have a kind of unique perspective on this because back in my former life, I would, sad to say, but I would work with clients who would say, well, we're going to pay those editors to come in, and by God, they're going to write about XYZ product and all the features and benefits contained therein. And I would have to say that's a great idea, but I can tell you it's not going to work. So because I understood the relationship between the role that the editors play. So there's a little bit of that as well, then, where expectations have to be set. So I hope I answered the question.
I think that was great. Another question, what kind of analytics from editorial do you provide to sales clients?
We just, this is a great example. Mike's got a how-to video series that he's running on the website right now. And I was just asking him about it earlier this week. And yesterday he said, hey, Leah, here's the metrics that we're seeing on those, time viewed, number of views, clicks, those kinds of things. So that kind of stuff, we try to be pretty up to speed on. Our team at Farm Journal, we have like bi-weekly Farm Journal sales team calls. And so our sales team manager often will say to us, wow, hey, this, is really gaining traction. And then every week our digital traffic team sends out a note on Monday mornings and shows us which stories got the highest clicks and any thing like that that's getting really good traction on social media channels or anything like that for us. And that comes more from an internal ops team versus our editors, but that the how-to videos was a good example.
Mm-hmm.
So when necessary, sometimes it's more often than not.
Okay. Mike, this one comes from Eric Johnson. When getting review of the product comparison table, did you send the full table to each client contact, or did each individual company see only their own product info?
Oh gosh, no. I sent the whole table to every client because, again, to be fully transparent. The thing that you have to be aware of, so the thing that I was conscious of is I didn't want one company to say, well, that other company's product doesn't do X, Y, and Z, and that's wrong. I didn't want to get into that situation. So I took everything that was in this instance for mastitis products, I took all label information. So it was all public information. It was everything that was on the label. So that way, if company A said, well, company B's product it doesn't do that, I can say, well, that's what's on the label, so that's what we're going with. So, so I think in the interest of transparency, everybody, all of the companies need to see what's being published. So again, you don't want to have that call where
That call. We all know what that call is, where a company calls and says, you put that in the. I wasn't aware of what was being published. So you have to be transparent.
Okay. Oops. And then let's see how we're doing. We got a couple more, or one more at least. Based on your knowledge, experience now, is there a story that you were involved in with earlier that you would approach differently?
Can you say that again?
Yep. Based on your knowledge or experience now, is there a story you were involved with earlier that you would approach differently today?
Boy, that's a tough question. It's hard for me to remember because I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, but an article doesn't pop to my head really that where I would have done anything differently. So it's hard for me to answer that question. I have seen instances where I've read things in other publications where I thought, well, that's going to cause some issue and not necessarily in my industry, but when I read any sort of an article and I think, well, that they went a little bit too far in endorsing a product or service. It just sometimes makes me uncomfortable. So, but I don't know that I identify one where I would go back and say, well, gosh, I would do that differently. Mostly because I try to, as much as possible, to do due diligence before the article is developed so that I can avoid those situations where I might go back and say, gosh, I should have done something differently. So, but I don't think anything comes to mind in our instance.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And let's see, last one. How much does your editorial calendar play a role in identifying potential story ideas?
I think we can probably both answer that, but from an editorial standpoint, it just helps me to plan out my year so that we can ensure that all of our content bases are covered. But I know an editorial calendar doesn't necessarily handcuff the content that we develop.
Right.
It's used more as a guideline for, for content to go into magazines. And for our publications, we try to follow the editorial calendar very closely on dairy herd management because it's more management focused and more, it's more, milk quality and nutrition and genomics and things like that. Whereas on the milk side, because it's more business related, it changes.
Yep.
And so, but for us, it's a guideline. You can answer that.
I would say the same thing. So I utilize it a lot in the fall when our media kits are first out and I'm having those initial meetings or sending it around to clients saying, hey, here's what we've got, take a peek at the editorial calendars. But at the same time, I rely more heavily, I feel like, on the monthly updates that we get from our editorial team just ahead of going to press so that I'm more aware of actual stories that fell into the issue. Because in August, when they're planning out the calendar for 2020, again, they don't have that crystal ball either. So those are things that are the big topics that they think are going to be important and timely for the season. But inevitably, life happens, and then you make the best decision at the time of what's going to be the most relevant. And that's when I can read those updates and take it to the appropriate accounts and say, hey, did you know?
That's great. Well, that's awesome, guys. We are exactly at 10:45, and we really appreciate you guys coming and doing this today. You are a great team, and you have a lot of success together, and it's fun to learn and watch from both of you. Before we all head off to the rest of our days, I wanted to let Angie do a quick preview of our next coffee and collaboration.
Yeah, as we're headed into summertime, it's nice for see that green grass and those warmer weather. But a big part of what we do in livestock publishing this summer is covering those junior shows, those national junior events. And so our April coffee and collaboration, which is going to be April 24th at 10 o'clock, we're going to take a look about how to effectively cover youth shows from a magazine standpoint, from social media, video, external media perspectives as far as press releases, and the Angus team, headed up by Julie, the editor on the Angus Journal, is going to kind of lead us in that discussion, and as we kind of talk about those youth and how we share their stories in our publications. So we look forward to having everybody online with that, and we're always looking for new content and ideas for coffee and collaboration. So if you have ideas, don't hesitate to drop Jennifer or I an idea. We try to keep a balance from editorial to design to sales to marketing. So let us know what you want to hear because that's what this is all about.